In the year 1619, as the first whispers of winter brushed the sprawling plantations of the American South with a chilling breath, a breathtaking saga began to unfold beneath a sky heavy with frost that seemed to press down upon the earth. From the muddy shores of Virginia, where the journey of the enslaved Africans first took root.
Welcome to The Glorious Historian, where the silenced voices of enslaved Africans resound through time. From brutal chains to unbroken spirits, we unveil their struggles, resilience, and legacy. Subscribe now, share your thoughts below, and journey deeper into their truth. Let their voices guide your heart. Listen on.
Their arrival marking a turning point in history to the vast, frost-dusted fields of Georgia that stretched out like a frozen tapestry. The air turned sharp and biting, slicing through the tattered cotton shirts and dresses worn by these resilient souls like fragile armor against the cold's relentless assault. The plantation masters, cloaked in rich wool suits that shimmered with authority and wealth, strode forth with commanding voices that echoed across the fields, their presence a stark contrast to the shivering figures they ruled with an iron hand, their privilege a stark reminder of the divide. These enslaved souls, men with broad shoulders etched with stories of endurance, women with eyes that held silent strength and a depth of spirit, and children with tiny hands trembling from the chill that seeped into their bones, emerged from their drafty cabins, their breath forming ghostly clouds in the dim dawn light that barely illuminated their path. The overseers, bundled in grey wool coats that mocked the freezing air with their warmth, cracked their whips with rhythmic precision, urging the day's labor to begin as the frozen fields stretched out like a battlefield awaiting its warriors. Each step crunched with defiance against the icy ground, each frozen bucket they carried a testament to their unquenched thirst for survival. Yet, in the heart of this icy dawn, a spark of magic ignited like a flame in the darkness. Hushed songs, carried on the wind like a secret melody passed down through generations, rose from their lips, spirituals that warmed the soul with their haunting beauty and offered a thread of hope. Hands clasped in hidden solidarity beneath the watchful eyes of their oppressors, offering a fleeting warmth that spoke of unity, while small fires, kindled from scavenged twigs and guarded fiercely, flickered with hope against the encroaching frost. This was no ordinary struggle. It was the birth of a legend, where the cold became a formidable foe they vowed to outlast with every fiber of their being. Their spirits, woven with courage and fortified by the bonds they forged, began to craft a tale that would echo through the centuries, turning the onset of winter into a canvas of resilience, painted with every defiant breath they took, every whispered prayer, and every shared glance that carried the weight of their dreams. The frost glittered like diamonds across the fields, a cruel beauty that challenged their every move with its slippery embrace. Yet they moved forward, their footsteps a rhythm of resistance that beat against the silence. The masters' voices faded into the background as the enslaved turned their focus inward, finding strength in the shared glances and whispered encouragements that passed between them like a lifeline in the cold. The overseers' whips cut the air with a sharp snap, but their spirits remained unbroken, rising like the smoke from their tiny fires that danced in the wind. Each frozen tool they lifted became a symbol of their determination to persevere, each shiver a note in a song of survival that would grow louder with time, resonating with the dawn's cold embrace. The dawn stretched on, a relentless test of their limits that pushed them to the edge, but they met it with a fire that burned within, a flame that no frost could extinguish no matter how fiercely it tried. Their laughter, soft and rare, like a precious gift, rang out like a bell of hope, a sound that carried them through the morning's icy grip and into a story that would inspire generations to come with its unyielding spirit. As the morning frost tightened its icy grip across the southern lands from 1619 to 1865, a thrilling adventure unfolded beneath a glistening white veil that blanketed the earth in a shimmering shroud, transforming the landscape into a frozen dreamland. The fields of the Carolinas and Mississippi sparkled like a crystalline wonder, each step a daring dance to avoid slipping into the cold earth's embrace, a challenge that quickened their pulses with every cautious move and tested their agility. Enslaved Africans, draped in tattered cotton that fluttered like broken wings in the biting wind that whipped across the plains, moved with a heroic grace that belied their suffering, their bodies trembling as they hacked at the frozen ground with tools that bit into the ice, or gathered brittle wood with determined hands that refused to yield to the cold's relentless assault. The masters, resplendent in fine wool suits that gleamed with power and privilege, watched from a distance with cold eyes, their commands rolling like thunder over the frost-covered expanse, a distant drumbeat that set the pace of their labor. Overseers, wrapped in grey wool coats that shielded them from the chill with a mocking warmth, wielded whips like maestros of a harsh symphony, their stern figures cutting through the morning mist like dark sentinels guarding their domain. The air rang with the crunch of ice underfoot, a sound that echoed with their struggle, and the soft gasps of those pushing forward, their hands raw and red from the cold's relentless touch that left marks on their skin. Yet, amidst this frozen battlefield, where every breath was a battle, a tale of triumph began to weave itself into the fabric of their lives. Companions rubbed frostbitten fingers together, sharing fleeting warmth from a hidden flame that danced in the shadows like a secret star guiding their way. They turned icy tools into symbols of their unyielding resolve, their laughter a soft rebellion against the frost's hold that lifted their spirits higher with each chuckle. The morning's icy grip, a relentless adversary that sought to bind them in its frozen chains, met its match in their spirited defiance, crafting a story of survival that would inspire generations with every brave step they took across the slippery terrain. The sun peeked through the clouds, casting a faint glow on their efforts like a silent witness to their struggle, its weak light a beacon of hope. Their movements, though slowed by the cold that seeped into their bones, carried a rhythm of resilience, a dance of survival that turned the frost into a stage for their courage to shine. The overseers' shouts faded into the wind, drowned out by the soft hum of their unity that grew stronger with each passing hour, a melody of strength. The frozen ground beneath them became a canvas for their story, each footprint a mark of their defiance against the odds, each shared glance a promise of hope that would carry them through the day's challenges with unwavering determination. When midday cast its feeble light across the southern plantations from 1619 to 1865, The cold persisted like an unyielding shadow that clung to the land, spinning a gripping tale of endurance under a pale winter sun that offered little comfort against the biting chill. The fields of Louisiana and Alabama stretched out like a frozen canvas painted with ice, where enslaved Africans moved with a heroic resolve that shone through their hardship, their tattered cotton garments fluttering uselessly against the biting air that stung their skin like tiny needles of ice carried on the wind. The masters, cloaked in fine wool suits that shimmered with authority and stood as a symbol of their dominance, stood as distant figures of power, their voices carrying orders over the wind's mournful howl, a call to action that echoed across the frost-laden expanse. Overseers, bundled in grey wool coats that mocked the shivering workers with their warmth, patrolled with whips in hand, their presence a constant challenge to the spirit that refused to break under the pressure. The enslaved pressed on with chattering teeth and determined hearts that beat with an inner fire, their breaths visible like tiny clouds of defiance rising into the frigid air, a testament to their unyielding will. In this icy theater where every movement was a performance of survival, a legend began to grow. Huddling together for warmth in the midday sun, they turned the cold into a shared battle. Their whispered dreams and soft laughter, a rebellion against the midday chill that sought to silence their voices. Frozen puddles glimmered like forgotten mirrors reflecting their courage, and tattered coat fragments became relics of their struggle, marking a saga of endurance that warmed the coldest hours with every courageous heartbeat that pulsed through their veins. The sun climbed higher, a weak ally in their fight against the cold, casting long shadows that danced with their movements like partners in their struggle. Their hands, though numb from the frost, worked with a purpose that drove them forward, turning the icy challenge into a test they would conquer with every swing of their tools. The overseers' whips cracked like thunder across the fields, but their spirits soared above the sound, lifted by the shared strength that flowed between them like a river of hope. Each step forward was a victory over the cold, each shared breath a promise of survival that wove a tale of resilience, inspiring with its unyielding spirit through the long afternoon hours that stretched before them. The afternoon from 1619 to 1865 brought icy trials to the southern fields, where enslaved Africans embarked on a thrilling quest against the deepening frost that turned every task into a test of valor under a sky heavy with cold that pressed down upon them. From the rolling hills of Virginia to the wide expanses of Georgia that shimmered with ice, the land sparkled with a glittering challenge that tested their every move with a fierce intensity that demanded their utmost strength. Those in tattered cotton clothing carried heavy loads with numb hands that ached with the effort, their bodies weary yet unbroken by the cold's relentless embrace that wrapped around them like a shroud of despair. The masters, resplendent in fine wool suits that gleamed with power and privilege, set lofty goals from their warm perches, their wealth a distant prize glinting in the distance, like a taunting star that mocked their toil. Overseers, wrapped in grey wool coats that offered a cruel contrast to the workers' plight, drove them with whips that cut through the air, their stern gazes unrelenting as the air carried the sound of crunching ice and the soft moans of effort that rose like a chorus of resilience. Yet, A tale of triumph emerged from this frozen battlefield. Comrades lifted each other over slippery paths with hands that trembled but held firm, their strength a silent anthem that echoed across the frozen ground, a melody of hope that filled the air. Broken sleds, abandoned in the snow like relics of their struggle, became symbols of their perseverance, their spirits rising like the faint sun that struggled to break through the clouds with its weak light. This afternoon's icy challenge, a wild adversary that sought to halt their progress with every step, met its match in their indomitable will, weaving a narrative of courage that would endure through the ages with every brave effort they expended. The cold bit deeper into their flesh, but their resolve grew stronger, a fire that burned within despite the frost's icy grip that sought to quench it. Their hands, though trembling with the chill, clasped in support that offered a lifeline, turning the icy trials into a dance of defiance that moved to their own rhythm. The overseer's commands faded into the wind, overshadowed by the beat of their unity that carried them forward with purpose. Each load they carried became a badge of honor, earned through hardship, each shared glance a spark of inspiration that ignited their spirits, crafting a legend that would shine through the afternoon's harsh embrace with a brilliance that could not be dimmed. As evening draped the southern plantations in shadow from 1619 to 1865, a freezing toil unfolded, transforming the twilight into a stage for an epic struggle against the cold that settled like a heavy curtain across the land. Enslaved Africans, clad in tattered cotton that shivered in the wind like fragile leaves caught in a storm, labored under the fading light that cast long shadows across the fields, their bodies weary from the day's exertions, yet their hearts ablaze with a resolve that refused to dim in the face of adversity. The masters, cloaked in fine wool suits that gleamed with authority and stood as a testament to their dominance, reaped the day's gains from afar, their figures distant and commanding like shadowy kings ruling over a frozen realm that stretched beyond the horizon. Overseers, bundled in grey wool coats that pushed the workers with cruel precision, pushed with a relentless drive, their whips cutting through the cold air like sharp notes in a harsh melody that echoed across the fields with a chilling rhythm. The fields echoed with the soft thud of wood being gathered from the frozen ground and the rustle of frozen grass bending underfoot, a symphony of survival that filled the dusk with sound and struggle. Yet, a story of defiance took root in this harsh landscape. Shared fires cast a warm golden glow across their tarred faces. Hands clasped in secret support offered a fleeting strength that warmed their souls like a gentle embrace. And frozen lanterns became beacons of hope, piercing the darkness with a soft light that guided their way. This evening's toil, as harsh as the frost that clung to the earth with an icy grip, was outshone by their unyielding spirit, crafting a legend of endurance that would light the way through the longest nights with every brave effort they summoned from within. The twilight deepened, casting a pall over their labors, but their courage grew, a flame that flickered against the cold with a steady glow. Their movements, though slow with exhaustion, carried a purpose that drove them forward, turning the freezing toil into a testament to their strength that could not be broken. The overseers' shadows loomed large across the fields, but their spirits soared above, lifted by the shared warmth that flowed between them like a river of hope. Each piece of wood they gathered became a victory over the cold, each shared glance a promise of resilience that wove a tale that would endure through the night's embrace with an unquenchable fire. The night from 1619 to 1865 brought a shivering rest to the southern quarters, where enslaved Africans faced a thrilling quest for warmth amidst the icy darkness that cloaked their world in a silent chill that seemed to seep into their very souls. Wrapped in tattered cotton that offered little protection against the cold's relentless assault, they huddled on cold, hard floors that offered no comfort, their bodies trembling like leaves caught in a winter storm that raged outside, their breaths forming faint clouds in the dim light that barely pierced the gloom of their cramped cabins. Overseers, cloaked in grey wool coats that shielded them from the chill with a mocking warmth, patrolled with lanterns held high, their shadows stretching long and ominous across the frozen ground like spectres of the night that haunted their dreams. The masters, draped in fine wool suits that symbolized their wealth built on this deprivation, allowed only a fleeting peace that offered no respite, while the cabins creaked with the weight of the cold and the soft rustle of their restless sleep that filled the air with a quiet desperation. Yet, a tale of triumph emerged from this shivering night like a beacon in the darkness. Shared blankets, passed from hand to hand with care, offered a fragile warmth that wrapped around their souls like a gentle embrace that offered solace. Whispered songs, soft and haunting, with a melody that carried their heritage, lifted their spirits like a gentle breeze that carried hope across the frozen landscape, and tattered shawls became shields of courage against the darkness that threatened to engulf them with its icy fingers. This night's shivering rest, a battle against the cold's relentless grip that sought to break their spirit, birthed a story of resilience that would shine like a beacon, guiding them through the darkest hours, with every brave heartbeat that pulsed within their weary frames. The cold pressed closer with each passing moment, but their unity grew stronger, a bond that warmed more than any fire could hope to achieve in the face of such adversity. Their whispers turned into a lullaby of defiance that echoed through the night, a sound that offered comfort and strength. The overseers' lanterns cast flickering light across the cabins, but their spirits rose above, lifted by the shared strength that held them together like an unbreakable chain. Each shared blanket became a symbol of hope that shone in the darkness, each soft song a note in a melody of survival that crafted a legend that would light the way through the frozen night with an enduring glow. The lack of warmth from 1619 to 1865 cast a heavy shadow over the southern plantations, spinning a dramatic tale of survival against a dual foe of cold and hunger that tested the very core of their being with every passing moment of deprivation. Enslaved Africans, clad in tattered cotton clothing that hung like worn banners against the chill that pierced their skin, shivered through their meager meals that offered little sustenance, their frames frail yet fierce, with an inner fire that refused to be extinguished by the harsh conditions. Overseers, wrapped in grey wool coats that mocked their plight with every step they took in comfort, withheld fuel with a cold grip that tightened like a vice around their hopes, their control as unyielding as the frost that coated the ground. The masters, resplendent in fine wool suits that gleamed with the wealth built on this suffering, turned a blind eye to their agony, their prosperity growing from this harsh deprivation that left the enslaved in despair, while the cabins echoed with the hollow clatter of empty hearths and the soft sighs of exhaustion that filled the silence with a mournful tune. But from this bleak canvas painted with hardship, a legend arose like a phoenix from the ashes. Scavenged scraps of wood and cloth were transformed into tiny flickering fires that danced with hope like stars in the darkness, offering a glimmer of light. Hands reached out in silent support, offering a strength that warmed more than the flames could ever hope to achieve, and frozen rags became tokens of their unyielding fight against the cold that sought to break their spirit with its icy touch. This toll of cold, a relentless adversary that pressed down with icy fingers that sought to crush their will, met its match in their spirited defiance, weaving a narrative of hope that turned every shiver into a step toward triumph with every breath they took to survive. The emptiness of the hearths became a challenge that they faced with determination, but their resolve filled the void with a warmth that grew from within their hearts. Their hands, though cold and trembling, clasped in unity that offered a lifeline, turning the lack of warmth into a battle they would win with every effort. The overseer's control wavered in the face of their strength, overshadowed by the bond that flowed between them like a river of hope. Each scavenged scrap became a victory over the cold, each shared sigh a note in a song of survival that crafted a tale that would shine through the coldest nights with an unquenchable spirit. The storm's relentless fury from 1619 to 1865 swept across the southern fields, unleashing a thrilling saga of bravery against a tempest of snow and wind that roared like a wild beast unleashed from the heavens with a deafening howl. Enslaved Africans draped in tattered cotton that offered no shield against the onslaught of nature's wrath battle the blizzard with bodies exposed to the elements that tested their courage with every gust, their every move a dance with the storm that sought to overwhelm them. Overseers, cloaked in grey wool coats that insulated them from the chaos with a cruel warmth, demanded labor with indifferent voices that cut through the storm like a blade, their figures stark against the swirling snow like dark sentinels standing guard. The masters, wrapped in fine wool suits that shielded them from the havoc, ignored the storm's destructive force for the sake of profit that drove their empire, while the air roared with the howl of wind and the crunch of snow underfoot that filled the world with a chaotic symphony. Yet, from this frozen battlefield where survival was a daily fight, a tale of triumph unfolded like a beacon in the storm. Shelter was sought in hidden nooks and crannies that offered a brief respite. Hands clasped tightly against the storm's fury like a lifeline that held them together, and snow-covered hose became symbols of their resolute spirit that refused to bend under the pressure. This storm's wild challenge, a force of nature bent on their defeat with every blast of wind, was defied by their unyielding courage, crafting a legend of survival that would echo through the ages with every defiant stand they took against the tempest's rage. The wind howled louder with each passing moment, but their resolve grew stronger, a shield against the fury that threatened to tear them apart. Their steps, though faltering under the weight of the snow, carried a purpose that drove them forward, turning the storm into a stage for their bravery to shine. The overseer's demands faded into the roar of the tempest, drowned out by the rhythm of their unity that beat like a drum. Each shelter they found became a haven from the cold, each clasped hand a promise of hope that wove a narrative that would shine through the storm's relentless grip with an enduring light. The overseer's cold oversight from 1619 to 1865 loomed like a dark cloud over the southern fields, spinning a tense tale of obedience under a frozen watch that chilled the soul with every piercing glance that followed their every move. Enslaved Africans, clad in tattered cotton that fluttered in the wind like fragile flags of their struggle, labored with every action, tracked by unfeeling eyes that sought to crush their spirit, their hearts pounding with a quiet, simmering rebellion that burned beneath the surface like a hidden fire. Overseers, bundled in grey wool coats that shielded them from the frost with a mocking warmth, wielded whips with a precision that cut through the air like a blade honed for control, their stern gazes a constant test of the spirit that refused to yield under the pressure of their watch. The masters, draped in fine wool suits that gleamed with the wealth built on this oppression, relied on this iron control to fuel their gains, while the fields echoed with the snap of leather and the crunch of frozen ground beneath weary feet that carried their silent protest. But from this oppressive shadow that hung over them like a storm, a story of courage began to emerge like a ray of light. Secret plans were whispered in the stillness like hidden treasures passed in the night. Coded signals flashed like stars guiding their way, and frozen whips became relics of their fight against the cold that sought to bind them with its icy chains. This cold oversight, a heavy burden that pressed down with an icy weight that sought to crush their will, was challenged by their defiant spirit, weaving a narrative of hope that turned every watchful eye into a witness to their resilience with every step they took toward freedom. The overseer's presence grew heavier with each passing hour, but their resolve lightened the load, a fire that burned within their hearts with an unquenchable flame. Their whispers turned into a plan of defiance that grew in the shadows like a seed in fertile soil, a strategy that offered hope. The master's control wavered in the face of their strength, overshadowed by the bond that flowed between them like a river of courage. Each coded signal became a victory over the cold, each whispered word a note in a song of hope that crafted a legend that would rise above the cold oversight with a triumphant spirit. The community's warm bonds from 1619 to 1865 glowed like a beacon across the southern lands, telling a heartwarming tale of unity that defied the cold and the forces that sought to tear them apart with every cruel twist of fate that tested their resolve. Enslaved families, wrapped in tattered cotton that offered little comfort against the chill that seeped into their bones, clung together despite the threat of separation that loomed like a shadow. Their love, a shield that glowed with an inner strength that refused to fade in the face of adversity. Overseers, cloaked in grey wool coats that insulated them from the cold with a mocking warmth, enforced cruel splits with harsh commands that echoed like thunder across the fields, their authority a cold wind that swept through the cabins with a chilling force. The masters, resplendent in fine wool suits that gleamed with the wealth built on this discord, profited from this division, Yet the air rang with shared laughter and the soft warmth of togetherness that filled the space with a life-affirming energy. From this fragile unity that held them together like threads in a tapestry, a legend grew like a flower in the frost. Fires were shared among trembling hands, offering a golden light that warmed their souls with its gentle glow, while hands held in secret support wove a tapestry of hope that shone like a star in the darkness. Communal blankets, passed from one to another with care, became symbols of their unyielding strength, turning the cold into a backdrop for a story of resilience that warmed the hardest hearts and inspired a legacy of courage with every shared moment that passed between them. The cold pressed harder with each passing night, but their bonds grew tighter, a warmth that radiated from within their spirits with an unquenchable fire. Their laughter turned into a melody of defiance that carried hope across the fields, a sound that lifted their spirits. The overseer's commands faded into the background, overshadowed by the strength that flowed between them, like a river of unity. Each shared fire became a victory over the cold. Each held hand a promise of resilience that wove a narrative that would endure through the coldest times with an enduring light. The legacy of coal, Defied from 1619 to 1865, stands as a triumphant tale where enslaved Africans' resilience against the winter's icy grip shaped a saga of inspiration that blazed a path to freedom by 1865, with a brilliance that could not be dimmed by the harshest frost. Clad in tattered cotton that bore the marks of their struggle like badges of honor earned through hardship, their bodies chilled to the bone, yet their spirits ablaze with an unquenchable fire that burned within. They turned frost-covered fields into a battleground of hope that echoed through the ages with every step they took toward liberation. Overseers in grey wool coats and masters in fine wool suits faded into the background like ghosts of a bygone era, their power diminished by the rising tide of courage that swept across the land with a force that could not be stopped, while the earth itself seemed to thaw under the weight of their determination that pushed them forward. From this frozen crucible where their strength was forged, a legend was born like a phoenix rising. Survival skills were taught with the wisdom of elders whose voices carried like the wind across the fields. Songs of freedom rang out like a clarion call that pierced the silence with a triumphant note, and broken chains became symbols of their hard-won victory that shone like gold in the sunlight. This legacy, a radiant defiance that lit the path to justice with every step they took, inspired all who heard their tale with its unyielding spirit, turning every shiver into a step toward a brighter dawn and etching their story into the heart of history with a light that would never fade through the centuries that followed. The frost melted away with the coming of spring, but their courage remained, a flame that burned eternal in their hearts with an unquenchable glow. Their songs turned into an anthem of triumph that carried hope across the land, a sound that inspired generations. The master's shadows vanished into the past, overshadowed by the strength that defined their legacy with every breath. Each broken chain became a victory over oppression. Each taught skill, a promise of freedom that crafted a narrative that would inspire generations with its enduring light that shone like a beacon through the ages.